Hey guys, tonight we begin with the remarkable lives and incredible resilience of medieval peasants, the everyday heroes who, despite unrelenting hardship, managed to survive some of the coldest, harshest nights in history. From clever insulation methods made with straw and ash, to how entire families slept shoulder to shoulder just to stay alive. Their story is one of grit, silent strength, and unshakable determination. The cold doesn't knock. It settles, slowly, silently, the way sleep does, if you let it. But imagine a night without electric warmth, no buzzing heater, no insulated walls, just the dark hum of wind pressing against wooden planks, and the creak of frost tightening its grip outside your window. Imagine your bed is a pile of straw. Your blanket is made from wool so coarse it scratches your skin. And the air bites. In medieval Europe, winter wasn't a season. It was a test. Every year, it returned like an old debt collector, unforgiving and unannounced. And when it came, it asked one question: are you prepared? For the average peasant, the answer was almost always, not really. Let me take you back, not to a specific year, not to a famous name in history, but to a nameless village, blanketed in snow, somewhere deep in the countryside. There are no kings here, no castles, just huts, the kind made of wattle and daub, wooden frames stuffed with straw and mud. The roofs are thatched, uneven, speckled with frost, and smoke curls lazily from a hole in the roof, the only sign that something inside is alive. Step closer. Inside, it's dim. Not dark, but hazy, the kind of warm gray air made from soot and breath. A single fire glows in the hearth, no bigger than a man's hand. It's the heart of the home, and like any heart, if it stops, everything else follows. The entire family, sometimes 6, sometimes 10 people, share this one-room space. No rooms, no privacy, just bodies and breath and routine. Along the wall, you'll find a narrow sleeping bench, elevated to keep away from the rats. But most sleep on the floor, huddled together, wrapped in whatever scraps of cloth or fur they have left. The baby is closest to the fire, the oldest near the door. You might think that's cruel, but it isn't. It's practical. The old man insists on it. He says he can feel when the wind shifts, when the latch doesn't catch. He hears danger in the hinge. He's earned that spot by surviving winters you've never imagined. Clothes? Don't imagine soft sweaters or thermal lining. Picture layers: linen, wool, maybe a patch of leather sewn on for reinforcement. Gloves, if you're lucky. Mostly, it's hands rubbed raw, red, and stiff with cold. You can still hear the wind outside. The walls hold it back, but just barely. You hear it in the chimney, a low moan, like a spirit testing the stones. And when it howls, no one flinches. They've learned not to fear the wind, only the silence that follows. Silence means the fire's gone out. Every night before bed, someone is assigned to feed the flames. They take turns. It's usually the middle child, the one old enough to stay awake, young enough to be expendable if the cold gets too harsh. They crouch near the hearth, rubbing sticks together or feeding dry moss into the embers, whispering to it like it's a living thing. Because it is. Everything in the peasant's world breathes: the fire, the house, even the snow. They believe that if you respect these things, treat them like neighbors, they'll show mercy. But if you don't, well, the cemetery behind the chapel grows fastest in winter. But don't think it's all fear and survival. There's routine here, even peace, the slow rhythm of necessity. Wake, work, eat, sleep, repeat. In the evenings, voices lower. Songs hum under breath. Stories are told, mostly old ones, half true, half prayer. The kind passed down because they keep children quiet and remind adults who they are. Tonight, someone is recounting the tale of the black dog that walks the roads during snowfall. If you see him once, you're lost. Twice, and you're dead. They laugh when they say it, but no one looks toward the door. A kettle hangs above the fire, bubbling weakly. Not soup, exactly. A bit of barley, maybe a scrap of root, a pinch of salt if there was any left. But it's hot, and hot means hope. Out in the barn, the animals shift. A cow snorts, a hen rustles. Someone will check on them at dawn. For now, they're on their own, just like the people. There's no clock, only the sense that it's late. The fire cracks. A child coughs. A log settles with a hiss of steam. And then, quiet. Not because everyone is asleep, but because they've said all that needs saying. In this village, under this roof, during this winter night, no one is special. Everyone is surviving, just like the fire, just like the breath in your lungs, just like you. Now close your eyes. Snow doesn't fall like in paintings. It drifts, it settles, it waits. In the early hours of morning, before the rooster even thinks to cry, the world outside is a page untouched, white, quiet, still. But this stillness is not peace. It is a pause before movement, a breath before labor. The village awakens not with alarm bells, but with creaks and coughs. The elder stirs first. He always does. He checks the fire, nudging embers back to life with practiced hands. His knuckles are swollen from frostbite long past. His breath fogs in the cold air. He doesn't speak. There's nothing to say. Children begin to rise, not all at once, one by one, stretching limbs, wiping frost from lashes. The youngest cries, hungry, cold, or maybe both. The mother lifts her from the straw and brings her close to her chest, where it's warmest. She hums something tuneless. It doesn't matter what song it is. The warmth is the message. Breakfast is not a feast. It never is. A crust of bread if it didn't mold. A ladle of what remains in the kettle. If they're lucky, they'll chew on dried apples from autumn's last harvest. If they're not, they chew anyway. There's no time to waste. Winter doesn't wait. The father lifts his axe from the wall, its blade dulled by use, the handle worn smooth. He wraps a cloth around his palm, not for comfort, but to avoid splitting the same blister again. He steps outside. The cold greets him like an old rival, familiar and bitter. His breath comes out in clouds. He begins to chop. Wood is life. It heats the home, boils water, bakes bread. No task is more essential, more constant, more exhausting. Trees, once cut, must be split, dried, stacked. If they're wet, they smoke. If they're green, they don't burn. Every log is a calculation. Meanwhile, the older children tend to the animals. Chickens first. The coop is stiff with frost. Eggs, if any, are gathered quickly, before the cold cracks them. Then to the pig pen. The pigs grunt, steam rising from their backs. One child breaks the ice in their trough. Another refills it with snow. The cow, if the family is lucky enough to own one, is the prize. Its milk is warmth in liquid form. But she must be fed, brushed, soothed. If she's sick, the family goes hungry. So they whisper to her, pat her sides, offer her what little they have. Every hand has a task. Even the smallest fingers mend torn hems or pick lice from cloaks. No idle body lasts long here. Inside the house, the mother kneads dough, not from fresh grain. This is flour stored in cloth sacks under the bench, gathered months ago, rationed day by day. She mixes it with water, salt, A bit of leftover fat. The dough is stiff. The oven, a clay dome outside, is lit with dry twigs. Bread will take hours, but it will warm the walls. Outside, the sun hasn't risen. Only the sky lightens slightly, the deep blue fading into a dull steel gray. It might snow again, it might not. The wind will decide. Work continues until the stomach growls too loudly to ignore. Then they eat again. Still little, but hot, always hot. Then back to work, repairing fences, digging out pathways, replacing straw in the roof where snow has made it sag, collecting ice to melt for water. There is no pause, only the rhythm of survival. And yet, somehow, there's space for something else. A carved stick for the baby. A knot of fabric turned into a doll. A song hummed during chores. A line scratched into the wall marking the days since solstice. A piece of blue thread, saved for no reason but beauty. They know the cold will end. They always do. But they don't wait for spring. They make warmth wherever they can. Even in this. Even now. And outside the window, the snow keeps falling. As the day creeps forward, the cold never fully lifts. It lingers. Inside sleeves, behind knees, in the breath that clings to the back of the throat. By midday, the village looks unchanged. Snow packed tight beneath boots, smoke rising thin and pale from low roofs, a silence broken only by labor. There is no chatter. No idle talk about plans or dreams. The future is not a topic here. Only the next task, the next meal, the next frost. By now, the father has finished splitting wood. He stacks the logs under a lean-to beside the house, where the snow won't reach. His hands are red, cracked. A piece of bark has sliced his knuckle. He presses snow to the wound, not to heal, but to numb. The children are gathering water, not from a tap, but from the stream that runs near the edge of the wood. In summer, it babbles. In winter, it whispers under ice. They know where to break it. A flat rock pounded daily to keep the hole open. They kneel beside it, scooping icy water into wooden buckets, careful not to spill. If they do, the wet patch on their trousers will freeze before they're halfway home. One of them slips. The bucket tips, a splash, a muffled cry. The older child reaches down, helps him up. No scolding, no complaint, just work. Back at the house, the fire has been fed again. The dough has risen, barely. The mother wipes her hands on her apron and lifts the lid of a small iron pot. Inside is stew, if you can call it that. Bits of parsnip, turnip, and lentils, flavored by a sliver of dried pork rind. The smell is humble, but warm. She adds a few herbs from a cloth bundle above the hearth. Lavender, thyme, not for taste, for comfort. The bread bakes. The stew simmers. The baby sleeps in a cloth sling near the fire, cheeks pink from the heat. The elder hums under his breath, eyes half closed. He's remembering a song from long ago, one with a name he's forgotten. Outside, a visitor approaches. Not a traveler, those are rare in winter. It's the neighbor from 2 houses down, wrapped in a heavy wool cloak. He carries a sack over his shoulder. Inside are leeks and a wedge of cheese, his own stores. He offers them quietly. No ceremony, just need. In return, he takes half a loaf of bread and a promise. Help with mending the barn roof next week. If the snow holds, barter, not charity. This is how survival looks. Children take turns grinding grain at the millstone, arms aching from the weight. The rhythmic scrape is a lullaby now. In the barn, someone tends to a goat's injured leg, binding it with cloth and whispering promises. In the woodshed, another child carves kindling from bark, hands numb but precise. And above them all, the sky remains low, heavy with unshed snow. It presses on the land like a hand on a shoulder, but no one flinches. As afternoon darkens into evening, chores begin to slow. The family gathers, not for rest, not yet, but for warmth, for presence. They sit close to the hearth. The bread is broken, the stew is passed in wooden bowls. No one eats fast. Each bite is earned. The elder tells a story, not a fairy tale, but a memory. A winter like this one, long ago. The faces around the fire listen, not for the plot, but for the rhythm, the voice, the reassurance that they've seen this before, that this cold has a pattern, that it ends. The baby wakes. A child starts to sing softly, a song about animals in the forest, safe from hunters. The lyrics don't matter. The tone does. It's slow, soft, round. Outside, the snow returns, quietly, without malice, just a continuation of its endless descent. Inside, the fire glows steady. Shadows dance on the walls. A bowl is set aside for the morning, and one by one they lie down, wrapped in wool, pressed close, breathing in unison, not in fear, not in defeat, but in rhythm with the old world. Night arrives without ceremony. No street lamps flicker on, no hum of distant traffic, just a soft deepening of the dark, as if the sky itself has exhaled and gone still. The fire is now low, more ember than flame, but it glows enough to throw shifting patterns across the thatched ceiling. In that light, the room becomes something timeless. The children sleep first, their breath slow and even, arms tucked beneath rough blankets. The mother checks on each one, placing a hand gently on their backs, feeling the rise and fall as if confirming they are still here, still safe. The father has stripped down to his tunic, hanging his damp coat by the fire. It will dry by morning, or at least warm enough to wear again. He sits beside the hearth, staring into the coals, eyes unfocused. He's not tired, not in the usual way. He's tired beneath the skin where no sleep can reach. The elder is still awake. He always is. His back leans against the far wall, legs stretched out, a fur laid beneath him. He fingers a wooden bead on a string. Not a rosary, not quite. Just something smooth to hold. He remembers other winters, colder ones, harder ones, and he tells himself, like he always does, we lived through them too. The room is quiet now, only the occasional creak of the roof beams adjusting to the cold, the soft scrape of a log shifting in the embers. A mouse scurries behind the grain sack, undisturbed. This quiet isn't loneliness. It's survival's breath. A peace born not of comfort, but of repetition. This is how nights pass. This is how life goes on. Tomorrow will be the same cold, the same hunger, the same work, but also the same fire, the same hands, the same breath, steady in the dark, and that is enough. Hours pass unnoticed. The fire dips lower. The wind outside moans gently, like it's grown tired, too. Snow continues to fall. Not heavily, just enough to soften the edges of the world. The sky is black velvet, thick and silent. Someone shifts in their sleep. A cough, a murmur, then stillness again. And beneath that stillness, something sacred. Not in the holy sense, but in the human one. The sacredness of effort, of endurance, of a life not easy but honest. They have nothing, and yet they have made this shelter, this warmth, this moment. The walls may be thin, the blankets coarse, but they are together, alive, awake within the bones of winter. Eventually, the elder drifts off, too. Bead slipping from his fingers, mouth slightly open, breathing slow and shallow. The last to sleep is the fire, and outside, the snow keeps falling. By the time the first pale light of dawn begins to strain against the horizon, the fire is nothing more than a glow, a half-forgotten heartbeat in a room wrapped in stillness. The family remains curled together in the gloom, their bodies forming shapes of rest, exhaustion, and necessity. Sleep, in winter, is not a luxury. It is a tool, a way to pass the coldest hours when movement is dangerous and fuel scarce. But even before the sky fully lifts its veil of darkness, the house begins to stir. The mother is always the first to rise now. Her steps are soft, deliberate. She moves across the cold floor as though not to disturb the night itself. Her breath is visible, thin white strands unraveling into the air. She checks on the children, presses a finger to a forehead, adjusts a slipping cover, lifts the edge of a wool wrap to shield a bare ankle. Her hands are red, the skin cracked and healed a dozen times over, but they are steady. She knows this routine not as a list of chores, but as a rhythm learned over many winters. Each act a line in an old song. She kneels before the hearth and coaxes the fire back to life. First comes the dry moss, saved in bundles from the last summer's gathering. Then thin sticks, birch, pine. Finally, the thicker split logs, carefully stacked the day before. She doesn't rush. Fire, she knows, must be invited, not forced. It comes when it's ready. Outside, the cold remains deep and unforgiving. Snow blankets the world in silence. The footpaths through the village are barely visible, soft trenches pressed into white by worn boots and sled runners. Every shape is muted, every edge softened. Smoke already rises from a few chimneys, a sign that other homes too have survived the night. The father stirs next. He grunts softly, stretches, winces as his joints resist motion. Cold stiffens everything, knees, elbows, even breath. He does not speak. No one does yet. Words are a luxury reserved for warmth. He pulls on his boots, stiff with ice at the edges, and knots the cords without looking. He lifts his coat, still damp around the cuffs, and shrugs it over his shoulders. Then he moves to the door. The latch sticks, frozen from the inside. He breathes on it, knocks it loose, then opens the door slowly. A wave of cold air rushes in, nipping at every exposed inch of skin. But he does not flinch. The cold is not an enemy. It is a fact, like hunger, like gravity. He steps outside. Behind the house, the tools wait, leaning in rows against the wall of the barn. Axes, pitchforks, a hoe with a cracked handle wrapped in linen. He selects the shovel. Today, the snow must be cleared. The animals need access to water. The paths must be reformed. No one will do it for them. He begins. With each scoop of snow, he exhales a cloud of breath. The motion is steady, repeated. A slow war against encroaching stillness. The barn doors are next, swollen shut by last night's frost. He knocks them open with his shoulder, revealing the shadowed warmth within. The animals shift and breathe. The cow moos low. A chicken flutters on a beam. The goat snorts, stamping a foot. Inside the house, the children have begun to stir. The fire now burns steady, small but strong. The mother ladles water into a pot and hangs it above the flame. She grinds a handful of dried roots, turnip, burdock, and adds them to the pot. The smell is earthy, not pleasant, but it fills the space with something like promise. The eldest child pulls on her shoes, wooden soles wrapped in cloth. She takes the small bucket and prepares to fetch water from the stream. The path is slick, narrow, and winding. She will walk it without pause, without fear. She knows every bend, every dip, even under snow. The second child begins to feed the chickens. He moves with care, tossing grains with small hands, watching their pecking movements. One hen is missing. He notes it. A fox, perhaps, or the cold. Either way, it will not return. Each task, however small, matters. The family moves like gears in a single slow machine. Each step links to another. Every motion sustains the next. No one asks for rest. No one expects ease. The days are not measured by comfort, but by continuation. As the morning stretches forward, the village hums with quiet labor. A neighbor passes, pulling a sled stacked with firewood. He nods, but doesn't stop. A woman at the edge of the path breaks ice from her laundry barrel, breath catching in short gasps. From another roof, a boy leans dangerously far, pushing snow away from the eaves with a broom bound in reeds. No laughter, no idle noise, but not sadness either. Just motion, just life. Back inside, the mother cuts the bread. Thin slices, each portion deliberate. She saves the thickest crust for the father. The rest is divided among the children. A smear of fat, a dash of salt. Not a meal, but a start. They eat quietly, seated near the fire, bowls resting on laps. The warmth of the stew is worth more than its flavor. It spreads through their chests, down to their fingers. Outside, the sky remains pale and unreadable. It may snow again. It may not. It doesn't matter. They are here, and the fire burns on. By midday, the sun sits low in the sky, offering more light than heat, more presence than comfort. It glints weakly across the snow-covered roofs, catching the frost clinging to shutters and rafters. In the distance, a crow calls, a hollow sound that cuts through the stillness like a memory of movement. In the village, the rhythm continues, not quickened, not slowed, just steady. That's how things survive here, not through bursts of strength, but through the repetition of small, exacting efforts. In the yard, the father inspects the woodpile. It's shorter than he'd like. He does a quick count in his head. How many nights it might last. How long until another tree must fall. There's no time to delay. He shoulders his axe and sets off toward the tree line, his boots crunching over packed snow, each step measured. The trees stand still, tall and brittle with ice. Their bark is split in places from repeated freezes, and their limbs hang heavy, weighed down by weeks of snowfall. He selects one near the edge, thin enough to fell quickly, thick enough to split into clean, even logs. The axe falls in rhythm. Chop, breath, chop, step. He knows the weight of each swing, how deep to cut before the tree starts to groan, the angle needed to guide its fall away from the path. There's no room for mistakes. One bad step, one misplaced chop, and bones break in the silence of the woods where no one hears your name. The tree finally cracks, a slow, aching sound, and tips, groaning through the frozen air. Snow bursts upward as it hits, and the sound disappears into white. He wipes his brow, already sweating despite the cold. Back at the house, the children have taken up their own labors. The middle child sits by the window, mending a torn sock with a needle so fine it disappears in her fingers. The thread was dyed last summer with onion skins, yellowed now but still strong. She hums as she works, not out of joy, but out of habit. A tune passed down from her grandmother. She doesn't know the words, only the shape of the melody. Beside her, the younger boy works a simple whittling knife over a branch. Not for play, for a handle, maybe for the tool that broke last week or for something not yet made. His fingers are numb, and the knife is dull, but he continues. Each shaving curls like parchment. He saves the best pieces to feed the fire later. The mother moves between tasks like a ghost, silent, constant, attentive. She scrubs linens in cold water near the fire, pounding them with a flat stone, then hanging them on a rope above the hearth to dry. She watches the pot on the hook, stirs it occasionally, adds water if it reduces too fast. She doesn't speak unless necessary. Her voice is spare, reserved for instruction, for warning, for reassurance. She is the pulse of the home. The grandfather, eyes half-lidded, sharpens a blade against a stone, dragging it in slow, rhythmic strokes. He doesn't need the knife today, but he sharpens it anyway, because one day they will need it sharp. The snow begins to fall again, quietly, without warning. Thick flakes swirl down, covering the path the father took not an hour ago. The world outside narrows. Distances disappear. A curtain drawn by the sky itself. The father returns as the snowfall thickens, dragging the tree trunk behind him. His breath comes in bursts. His coat is lined with snow, face wind-chapped and raw. The children hurry to help him. Together they lift the branches, strip them, prepare them for stacking. They don't talk. They don't need to. The work continues inside as well. A child carries ashes from the hearth to the corner pit. Another replaces the bed straw, pulling out the old, sour bundle and laying in a new layer. Dry, golden, sharp-smelling. Fresh straw means fewer bugs. It means sleep. As dusk nears, the animals are fed again. The cow's water is broken from ice a second time. A few hens huddle together on the perch, feathers fluffed. The goat chews on hay slowly, eyes half-closed, belly round. The mother lights a tallow candle on the mantel, not for sight, but for calm. The small flame reflects in her eyes as she stirs the evening meal. More stew, stretched thinner now. Bread toasted over the fire's edge. A shard of cheese from the neighbor's trade divided into thin, trembling slivers. They eat by firelight, shadows stretching behind them. And then, voices, quiet ones, telling small stories, not grand myths, simple tales, of a fox spotted near the edge of the woods, of a cart that slid into a ditch last week, of the woman who gave birth during the last snowstorm and named her child Frost. The stories aren't meant to teach, or frighten, or even entertain. They are meant to fill the space between breaths, to warm the air between people, to remind each listener, you are not alone in this cold. Night deepens. The candle burns low, and the snow keeps falling. The fire has been fed again, not out of abundance, but from what could be spared. A few extra splinters, some bark curls, a carefully dried knot of twigs saved from the corner near the oven. The glow returns, faint and flickering, casting amber light across the uneven walls of the hut. Every movement in the room slows as the family prepares to yield once more to the stillness of the long night. The children finish their bowls, scrape out the last bits with wooden spoons. No food is ever left. Not out of hunger alone, but out of habit. Waste is a thing for people who know plenty. Here, every crumb is remembered. The youngest clambers onto a fur near the hearth, already half asleep, his breath catching in small, tired hiccups. His sister tucks a wool scrap around him and hums again. The same melody from earlier. Quieter now, almost like a thread sewing the night shut. Outside, the snow has become heavier. It falls in large flakes, each one drifting slowly, gently, almost theatrically. The world is being buried inch by inch, but no one speaks of it. Snow is not a threat unless you try to fight it. The trick is to surrender, to fold yourself into it, live around it, like water shaping to stone. The mother stirs the fire one last time. Her hands are soot-streaked and dry. She checks the walls, presses her palm to the stone near the chimney, feels for cold spots. She steps toward the door and bolts it tight, sliding a beam across the frame. It's not for bandits. There are none. Not in winter. It's for the wind, the kind that pries and moans and rattles the soul loose. The father sits now, knees drawn, hands clasped. He says nothing. His eyes are fixed on the fire, but he isn't seeing it. He's tallying things in his mind. How much flour is left in the sack? How many days before the smoked meat is gone? Whether the axle on the cart will hold when spring turns the road to mud? Whether the roof will bear another freeze? Whether the youngest's cough is getting worse? He doesn't sigh. He doesn't complain. He just continues. The grandfather speaks then, softly. One of his old stories, not even a full tale, just a fragment. A time when a snowstorm lasted 10 days, when the well froze, when a man from a nearby village walked 2 nights just to find dry wood. He lived. That's all. That's the end of the story. The room nods, not at the drama of it, but at the fact of it. Endurance isn't heroic here. It's just what people do. Each bed is prepared with care. The straw has been shaken out, blankets unrolled. Everyone has a spot. The father near the door, the mother with the baby, the older children curled close together, the grandfather farthest from the fire, not because he's less loved, but because he says he sleeps warmer with the cold on his face. They settle slowly, the way animals do. Small shifts, soft groans, the kind of movements that come only from people used to sharing space, body, breath. No one speaks now. Outside, the wind begins to rise again. It lifts the snow from the rooftops in gusts and throws it down the path. It howls between gaps in wood and stone, searching for weakness. It finds none. The candle is pinched out with 2 fingers. Smoke coils into the air, curling upward like a final thought. Only the fire remains. It crackles softly. A piece of pine lets out a long hiss, then splits in half with a sighing pop. Sparks blink and disappear in the darkness. The cold presses against the walls, curious and endless. But the house holds, and inside they sleep. All of them. Together. Wrapped in wool and memory, in smoke and straw, in silence. The world is white outside, and still the snow keeps falling. Somewhere past midnight, the village is suspended in a hush so complete, even the wind softens. The snow still drifts, relentless, steady, but its descent feels more like breath than movement. Each flake falls onto another without sound, thickening the world's blanket, smoothing every corner, burying every mark of the day before. In this silence, everything slows, not just people, but time itself. It stretches, becomes thick like sap in winter. Dreams form inside this pause, not bright or wild, but vague and heavy, shaped by the crackling remnants of the fire and the rhythms of breath echoing through the room. A branch shifts under the weight of snow outside. A faint creak, then silence again. The hut's interior glows faintly from the hearth's last coals. Shadows lie heavy in the corners. The smell is of smoke, wool, old wood, boiled root. Not unpleasant, just real, just human. And in this stillness, the cold tries to come in. It tests the seams of the door. It slips beneath the stone wall where it meets the earth. It presses against the glassless window's cloth covering, seeking any breach. But what it finds instead is resistance. Not from strength, but from accumulation. Layer upon layer of straw, fabric, soot, bodies, will. This place has been lived in too long to surrender. The children lie still, buried beneath blankets stitched by hands now long dead. The stitching is crude, uneven, done with bone needles and coarse thread, but it has lasted. Every patch a story, every worn spot a year. The youngest twitches in sleep, murmuring something unintelligible, and is soothed by a hand reaching blindly, half asleep. No words spoken, just a presence, just warmth. The grandfather stirs, not fully waking, but adjusting his limbs to ease the ache in his hip. He listens to the fire, counts the spaces between the pops of ash. He remembers winters with less, with thinner walls, with no salt. And though he does not think in full sentences now, the knowledge lives in him like marrow. This one, so far, is kind. The mother dozes lightly, as she always does. Half her mind remains attuned to every cough, every shift, every creak of the beam. She dreams only of small things, mending needles, warm bread, sun on her back. Her dreams are a kind of preparation, a map for the next day. The father doesn't dream. He sleeps like the woods sleep, still, dense, unconscious. His exhaustion is complete. It's the kind that cannot be explained to those who've never known hunger, fear, responsibility in the dark. Every night he earns this sleep. Every morning he will give it back. Outside, the snowfall begins to slow. Not stop, just lessen, as though the sky too is growing tired. A fox crosses the village path, its paws silent against the packed snow. It sniffs at the barn door, finds no opening, and moves on. Above, the moon is hidden, but its light diffuses through the cloud cover, illuminating the landscape with a soft, gray glow. Everything is still, and then, slowly, the world begins to shift again. It starts with a coal in the hearth collapsing into ash. Then, a rooster far off in another part of the village, uncertain of the hour, lets out a low, croaking call. A dog responds somewhere, then goes silent. The darkness lightens. Not much, just enough to change the shadows in the room. Just enough to signal to the mother that soon the day will begin again. She opens her eyes without blinking. No surprise, no sigh, just readiness. She lifts herself quietly and begins to move. The day will bring more snow. She can smell it in the air, feel it in her teeth. It will mean extra work, it always does. But she doesn't think of it as burden. She thinks only of steps. Stoke the fire, check the bread, warm the water. The father stirs next, as if pulled from sleep by her motion. Their eyes meet. No words, just a nod. Together they rise into the cold morning. And as the fire breathes again, weak, hopeful, steady, the room begins to warm, one breath at a time. Outside, the snow has stopped, but inside, the work begins again. By the time light fully breaks across the ridge, the village is once again in motion, not with speed, but with purpose. The snow lies thick, undisturbed, as if no one has touched it, as if the world pressed pause in the night. But already footpaths are forming again, grooves through which boots and sleds will soon pass, smoothed by repetition, etched by need. Inside the hut, the fire now burns with a low but confident flame. The pot above it simmers with thin porridge, barley and water stirred with care but little ceremony. The smell is faint, bland, but it means energy. It means something warm in the gut before the cold outside tightens its grip. The children rise one by one. No one calls them. No one shouts. They know the hour by the light on the wall, the sounds of movement, the smell of smoke. Each rises with practiced economy. Blankets folded, straw brushed from hair, shoes checked for cracks. The morning has no space for complaint. The eldest pulls on her outer cloak, thick wool patched and restitched a dozen times. She braids her hair tight, wraps a cloth around her ears. Today, she will join her father in the woods. A new section of forest must be cleared before the snows grow deeper. The trees must fall while the paths are still passable. There is no time to wait for spring. The middle child checks the chicken coop again. One hen has laid an egg, miraculously uncracked despite the cold. He lifts it with both hands like treasure, carries it inside and sets it near the fire. The mother nods, says nothing. They all understand what this means. Tomorrow's meal just became survivable. The youngest, too small for outdoor labor, gathers fire scraps, bark, dry twigs, bits of straw too short for bedding. She does this with great seriousness, hands red but unflinching. Even small hands carry weight in a winter like this. Outside, the world is blinding white. The sunlight hits the snow and scatters like powder, sharp against the eyes. The father and daughter begin their walk to the forest, dragging a small sled behind them, the axe and rope tied to it with a length of leather cord. Their breaths come in clouds. Their boots crunch with each step. They speak only once, to confirm direction. Then silence, walking, breathing, watching. Back in the hut, the mother kneads dough. Not for today, but for 2 days from now. The flour grows lower each week. She uses ash water to stretch it. The bread will be dense but filling. The warmth from the dough seeps into her fingers. She presses it slow, methodical. Each turn is part of the day's rhythm. The grandfather is mending a trap near the door. A wooden spring snare meant for rabbits, though success is rare in winter. Still, he adjusts the tension, replaces a splintered stick, knots a new cord. Not because he expects bounty, but because to stop trying would be to surrender. And no one surrenders to winter. The boy feeds the goat. She bleats quietly, tail flicking as she noses the last of the hay. He strokes her neck. She nuzzles him in return, warm and steady. There's no milk now, not until spring, but she's alive. That is enough. By midday, the father and daughter return, dragging branches stripped of limbs, the bark wet with sap that still runs beneath the frozen skin. They are exhausted, their cheeks flushed red, their boots soaked through. But they are smiling. Inside, the family eats again. Just enough. Porridge, a small slice of cheese, a bit of boiled onion. They eat without hurry. They chew every bite. The silence is not solemn. It is survival. The afternoon is spent in repair. The eldest patches the roof with reed mats. The boy patches a crack in the wall with straw and mud. The mother weaves a rag into a replacement mat for the door, her fingers working steadily without rest. It is not beautiful, but it holds back the cold. As the sun begins to dip again, the work slows. The animals are fed once more. The fire is banked for the night. The father splits more wood by the barn, stacking it in neat rows with bark facing out. Easier to light that way. Evening comes like it always does, not as a moment, but as a shift. A tone lowering, a hush spreading. The snow begins to fall again, fine and dry. It dances in the wind, swirls around corners, clings to the eaves. Inside the hut, the stew bubbles. The children settle near the fire. The eldest sharpens the axe for the next day. The youngest lays her head on her mother's lap, fingers curled, lashes fluttering. And, as the shadows grow long, the family leans inward, toward the glow, toward each other, toward the hope that tomorrow will look just enough like today to endure. The wind moans low across the hills, and still the snow keeps falling. Evening deepens, and the world outside retreats beneath a curtain of dusk and white. The fire now anchors the room, flickering in orange and gold, casting each face in soft relief. It crackles and sighs like an old storyteller, steady and familiar. Around it, the family folds inward, into silence, into warmth, into routine. The stew has been served, bowls emptied slowly, carefully, the way people eat when food is not taken for granted. One child lingers over her share, drawing lazy lines in the broth with her spoon. The mother gives a quiet glance, not scolding, only reminding. The girl eats. The father wipes his hands on a cloth that was once a tunic sleeve. He leans back against the wall, closes his eyes for a moment. His body aches in a way that isn't sharp but constant. Muscles used every day without pause. Bones chilled again before the warmth could settle. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The day's work is understood, shared between them all. The daughter, her hands still smelling faintly of pine sap, pulls out a small bundle from beneath the bed. Scraps of fabric, saved and hoarded. She begins stitching them into something undefined. A cover for a pot, maybe, or a lining for a sleeve. Her needlework is clumsy but improving. She hums low as she works, barely audible, but it fills the quiet like smoke fills space. The grandfather stirs, blinking at the fire. He lifts his hand and points to the shelf above the mantel. A jar of dried berries. Saved since autumn. A luxury. A reminder. The mother hesitates, then takes down the jar. She doesn't open it, not yet. She sets it beside the fire, lets its presence be enough for now. The wind picks up again. This time it whines under the eaves, slithering between stones and timber, probing the house like fingers in search of fault. A draft snakes across the floor. The children pull their blankets tighter. The father rises, checks the door beam, adjusts the fur at the threshold. He listens for any weakness. There is none. Outside, the snow begins falling in slanted sheets. The world beyond the walls becomes a blur of white and dark. No shape, no sound, only movement. But no one looks out. They've seen this before. They know the cold by heart. Inside, the baby wakes with a soft whimper. The mother lifts her without speaking, cradles her against her chest. She rocks back and forth in a rhythm too old to question, one passed from woman to woman for generations. The baby quiets. Her eyes blink slowly. The fire dances in them. The grandfather clears his throat and begins a story. Not one of knights or saints, but of a man who once slept through a blizzard beneath a fallen log, with nothing but a dog at his feet and a bottle of vinegar to keep warm. The children listen, wide-eyed. They ask no questions. They don't laugh. They simply absorb. Every story, no matter how strange, is stored somewhere, ready to be recalled when it's needed most. The mother smiles faintly. The father closes his eyes again. The fire spits briefly as resin bursts from a knot in the wood. The goat bleats outside, once, sharply. The boy stiffens, listening. The father is already at the door, wrapping his cloak. No hesitation. The barn must be checked. Outside, the wind lashes across his face, the snow stinging like sand. He moves quickly, his body knowing every step, every dip in the path, even in the dark. At the barn, he pushes the door open and steps inside. The animals are awake, uneasy but fine. The goat stands, shivering slightly. He checks her legs, rubs her side, whispers low. She calms. He lingers there a moment, among the warm bodies and hay-scented dark. It's a different kind of quiet. A living quiet. He adjusts the latches, tucks straw beneath the cow's belly, spreads another armful by the pig. Then, back into the storm. The door shuts behind him with a heavy thud. Inside, the family looks up. He nods. All is well. They begin preparing for sleep. Blankets unrolled, furs layered, children curled. The grandfather settles last, muttering about his knees, about the wind, about a dream he doesn't quite remember. The mother feeds the fire one last time. A final log. A bit of ash swept aside. The candle is not lit tonight. The moon, behind clouds, casts enough light to outline the shapes in the room. The walls seem to breathe. The floor creaks once as the wind eases, and then stillness. Only the soft rustle of straw, a child's breath catching in sleep, a sigh, the fire now a dull orange glow pulsing like a sleeping heart. Outside, the snow falls heavier than ever, but the house holds, and the warmth, though hard won, remains.